Nerd alert! Learning is important, right?
Yes, exactly. What a bunch of nerds.
Nerd alert!
Right.
Marketing Architects.
Hello, and welcome to the Marketing Architects, a research-first podcast dedicated to answering your toughest marketing questions. I'm Elena Jasper. I run the marketing team here at Marketing Architects, and I'm joined by my co-host, Rob DeMars, the chief product architect of Misfits and Machines.
Hello.
We're back with your weekly Nerd Alert. Every week, I'll take a deep dive into academic marketing research and translate its complex ideas into simple, understandable language for Rob. And of course, for all of you, are you ready to nerd out, Rob?
Oh, my NPS score, which of course stands for Nerd Promoter Score, is rocking. It's solid. Let's do this.
You know, we just had Dale Harris on the podcast, and he told us how dangerous it is to make new terms for things. So that's just like top of mind as soon as you said that. But I love it. We'll accept it. Let's get into it. As always, I'll link the research we cover in the episode notes. And this week, I read a fun study titled Assessing Branding Strength, Comparing Marketer Judgment and Consumer Data for Brand Identity Elements. This is by Ruby Bruss, Nicole Hartnett, Margaret Faulkner, and Carl Dressner, just published in June of this year. So this is a fresh one, hot off the presses. But before I get into things, Rob, let me ask you this. If I showed you a brand element from a brand that you've worked on, like a logo, a color, a sound, a tagline, how confident are you that you would know how consumers would respond to it?
God dang it, Elena. You know, you grow up in this industry thinking you have a pretty good gut. And if you didn't have a good gut, you didn't stay employed very long. You know, and I started in the 90s where there wasn't the level of sophisticated pre-testing that we have now. So, I mean, I'd sit here and go, yeah, I'm probably pretty good at feeling my way through it. But gosh, I know I'm going to find out how inaccurate I am in a second. So this just feels like a leading question. But, you know, I would like to think I have an above average gut along with most folks that work in marketing, because that's why we go into marketing.
Yeah. Honestly, if I'm being truthful, I'd probably say the same thing. Like, yeah, you want to think that, no, I know that I know that I'm actually better than the average person. But this study is going to challenge that a little bit, as you guessed.
Yes, it is. I knew it was going to, Elena. Why would you ask the question?
Right. So the researchers, they looked at just how accurately marketers, us, can judge the strength of our own brand elements. So they're looking at the logos, colors, sounds, and taglines that are supposed to cue the brand in a consumer's mind. They collected data from over 7,500 consumers across 50 brands, and they compared it to 1,400 predictions made by marketers. So marketers, we'd guess how famous and unique each brand element would be, meaning how many consumers would recognize the brand from that element, and then how many would correctly link it to the right brand. And what they found was, on average, marketers' predictions were pretty terrible. Only 2% of judgments were within 5 percentage points of reality.
We should all be fired.
I mean, yeah.
2%.
Yeah. About a third got within 20%, and only 44% of predictions even landed in the right quadrant on the distinctive assets grid, which is the most generous threshold the researchers tested. So the distinctive assets grid, just to mention what that is, it's a tool that maps how strong and unique a brand element is. And if you aren't familiar with that grid, you should pause this podcast and purchase the book Building Distinctive Brand Assets by Jenny Romaniuk and read it as soon as possible. But back to the study. What does that mean? It means marketers routinely overestimate how well-known their brand elements are. And oddly, they underestimate how unique those elements are. So on average, we tend to overestimate our brand's fame, and we tend to underestimate its uniqueness. So Rob, why do you think it's just so hard for marketers to judge the strength of their own brand elements?
I don't think I've ever seen your dog, Elena, but I bet your dog is cute.
The cutest dog you've ever seen.
And I mean, I just think that's the way we feel as marketers about our brands. You know, you don't call your dog or your kids ugly unless you're like a brand new CMO who wants to make the dog cuter and give it a different haircut. I think we have this need to defend the brand that we're working on, and it's better than it really is.
You can't really know exactly why this is, but the researchers do try to summarize it with two different biases. First, false consensus. So we live and breathe our own brands. We see the ads, the packaging, the colors all day long. So sometimes we assume that consumers must too, but of course they don't. So that explains that feeling of making our brands are more famous than they actually are. And the second is overconfidence. Many of us believe that our campaigns are building mental availability, even when they might not be. But here's what's fascinating. There were a couple of situations where marketers actually did better. which first was when the brand element was already strong with consumers, their guesses were more accurate, probably because their intuition finally aligned with reality. And second, when marketers made their judgments as a group, not as individuals, team-based predictions were significantly more accurate across the board. So why do you think that is, Rob? Why do you think teams are much better at judging brand elements than individuals?
I just innately struggle with that. I've always loved the quote, in all the world and in all the cities, no one ever erected a statue of a committee. And I tend to think that groupthink leads to the fastest way to get to vanilla. I'm actually surprised by it. You're avoiding the possibility of someone with a really bad opinion taking it too far because you have other views in the room. But gosh, that tends to be just the way to chisel something into something that's not remarkable, in my opinion. Obviously, I'm wrong because the data says I'm wrong. It's just how I feel. It's how I feel, Elena.
Well, to be fair, we're not saying that teams are better at coming up with unique brand elements. It's just judging how famous they are. So maybe it does have something to do with when you're in a group, maybe you're not going to go as extreme as you might, kind of talk each other off the ledge of certain things maybe. So what's the big takeaway from this study? If you're in charge of managing brand assets, don't rely on your gut. And definitely don't do it alone. Either get consumer data or at least bring in a cross-functional group to pressure test your assumptions. Because guessing how well our logos, colors, sounds are working, that is not brand strategy. That's just wishful thinking. And now to wrap us up with our Rob GPT, asking marketers to judge their own brand elements is like asking a chef if the kitchen smells good after 6 hours of cooking. They're too close to notice. The study shows that brand familiarity doesn't equal objectivity. If you want clarity, step outside, or better yet, ask someone who's actually hungry. Another version of this is how, I was thinking people's houses have a distinct smell, but you can't really tell what your own house's smell is. All right.
Well, yeah, it's like when you go on vacation and then you come home and you're like, our house smells like this.
Yeah. I always try to pay attention to that moment. Make sure your house smells good. When you've been gone for a little bit, you come back in.
Right.
Let you know. But yeah, what'd you think about that one?
That was good. That was good.
We have covered a study like this before, which is also by, I think, Nicole Hartnett might have been one of the authors, but don't quote me on that, at a Nerd Alert, where we talked about marketers' ability to predict the effectiveness of their ads. Do you remember that? No, they were no better than random chance at predicting, will this ad perform or not? Like, oh, this reminds me of that. So I feel like once we get a couple of these studies, the takeaway is we're not that great at predicting how things will do. So we suck. Maybe you should invest in pre-testing.
We should just let AI do our job.
Yeah, maybe. But just, not relying on your gut. And now it's easier than ever to do some type of synthetic audience pre-testing. So we're running out of excuses, people, but you probably are incorrect.
It's tough though. It's like, God dang it. Steve Jobs, or no, it was Henry Ford. One of those famous smart people said, if you ask people what they wanted, they'd create a faster horse. And it's like, okay, well, who are we listening to? That didn't even make sense. I'm not on today, Elaine. I don't know where the hell.
That's more of an existential question.
I told Taylor, I'm like, I woke up on the wrong side of life today, and I've been feeling a lot better, but apparently I'm still recovering.
Yeah, I love that question. Who are we listening to? What is the purpose of all this, really? That's the question. That's it for this episode of The Marketing Architects. We'd like to thank Taylor De Los Reyes for producing the show. You can connect with us on LinkedIn, and if you like the podcast, please leave us a review. Now go forth and build great marketing. The fact that you're not firing on all cylinders is really not good for this last one. But we'll try to get through it.
Marketing Architects.